What is up, guys? It's Dylan from Redneck Tuners, and I'm back with another video. Today's going to be special because we're working on the truck today. Usually we do the 240 stuff, so we're going to do a leveling kit on the truck today. And it's supposed to put it about 2 inches, maybe a little bit more. But it's a rough country leveling kit or the Max Racing one. They're both Amazon. They're both pretty cheap. But it's just a spacer kit. So we're going to throw that on. I'm going to try to do my best to show you exactly how to do it. There's plenty of videos on how to do the top spacer because there's two different spacers. There's a top spacer and then there's a spring preload spacer on the bottom. There's plenty of videos on how to do the top spacer. I'm still going to show you, but not many people do the bottom spacer. I've already technically done the spacer because I did it yesterday, but I made a video on it as best as I could to show you. But yeah, let's get into it. We're going to get the car jacked up. Shout out to Blake for letting me use his garage and helping me out so we don't have to sit in the sun all day. So let's get into it. So for starters, we're going to be only technically lifting the front, although I do have rear shocks, but the rear doesn't have to be lifted to do that. So we broke all the lugs in the front while it's on the ground. We're going to put wheel chocks in the back, and we're going to lift the front up, put some jack stands. Please use safe practice. I can't say this enough. Just please use jack stands. So we're going to get this thing up in the air, and we'll go to the next step. So we got 4 jack stands, 2 on the front subframe, 1 on each side of the actual frame. And I have the jack not applying pressure because you don't want to take it off the stands at all. But I have it right up under there. I always do that, just an extra precaution because we're going to start with this side. And then when I move to the other side, I'll move the jack on that side. Just as a last resort, if it falls. We won't be doing too much stuff under the truck. So it's okay, but I just want to be extra safe. So this is what I recommend doing. All right, so we're going to be starting with the sway bar end link here. There's a 15 millimeter nut up top, and I believe it's a 13 on the bottom. You're going to pull this off. This whole unit will come off together. Keep your hardware together. And then I don't know if we're necessarily going to need it, but there's 2 bolts here. I believe they're 10s on the actual sway bar to the frame here. We're going to pull that, make them loose at least, so we can have some playroom to wiggle out the shock maybe if we need to. We might not have to, but it's kind of safe that we do it anyways, and we'll just retorque them because it's good to retorque them. But yeah, so basically we're going to start with this, get these loose. After we've got that out and we've got this loose, then we'll work our way to disconnecting the brake line bracket here. I believe it's a 10 mil or a 12 on the back of the knuckle. We're also keeping our knuckle supported with another jack under there just in case. Once we've done that, we'll pull the bottom shock bolt out here. I don't remember exactly what size that is, but I'll figure that out when we get to there. You're going to pull this loose. Then, since I'm doing control arms, we're going to completely remove this this nut here. If you're not doing control arms and you really are just going to do the top spacer, you can basically just loosen this, not all the way, but you loosen it, and then you'll be able to kind of wiggle your shock out. Just throw the spacer on top and put it back up. But since I did the top spacer and the bottom spacer, we're going to basically we're going to remove everything. So I'm going to do all this, and then I'll report back to you. So the end link's off. I took this off. All the stuff you see here is WD-40 because I didn't want anything to break. But I also loosened the sway bar. I got Blake working on the other side doing the exact same thing so we can get this thing fully loose for some shifting. And the bottom shock bolt ends up being a 21 millimeter socket. I don't remember the equivalent to in the SAE form, but 21 mil. I use a breaker bar to get it loose, and then I've just been hand loosening it after that. Once we get there, we can decide what our next move is. I think it's going to be, like I said, this brake line bracket so we don't damage anything. We can move it out of the way. And then we'll probably end up getting rid of this here. Oh, sorry. Actually, we're going to do this next. It's the tie rod end link. And I'll show you, there's kind of a trick with this. I'll show you. So that way you guys don't ruin your end links. So we'll get to that next. All right, so the trick is basically these are 2 independent spinning items here. I believe this is a 10 mil. I'm going to verify this top little piece here. This is a 21 mil on the bottom. Basically what I did was I made up a line connecting both nuts because you don't want to spin them together. You want them to be moving independently. Sometimes they're stuck. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to throw a socket. You're going to test it. It's good to have an open-ended wrench, but you're going to test it, spin it. If it moves together, you know you're spinning the whole tie rod end, and you don't want to do that because you'll damage it. If that's the case, you take an open-ended wrench on the bottom and open-ended on top and work them against each other. Just so you guys get a kind of a visual of what I'm talking about, I got an open-ended just so I could show you. Mine is moving independently. Some people's don't, but watch. So when I spin it, you see that the top isn't moving, the bottom is. Wow, dang, I had a terrible aim. Yeah, so basically you do that, and we'll get this loose, and we'll move on to the next thing. But yeah, this is kind of dangerous at some points because you don't want to ruin your tie rod end, so just be careful. Like I said, do a very slight turn, see if your thing's moving independently or not. If it's not, use an open-ended, or if you want to just start with an open-ended, you can. So now that this is off, basically you're gonna use a mallet or something that isn't gonna damage the threads, and you're gonna push this out and this whole thing will pop out. All right, so it's been a little bit since I was tackling this side. I was looking at the other side, trying to decide how I was gonna do this. Basically, what I did was I removed the tie rod end here. Although this is gonna have to be moved again. Dang it. But yeah, we moved this. We're gonna use, we took out the bolt from the bottom of the strut here. We got all three out of the top, and then all of the, like this ABS line here is removed, so it's not doing that. I could not for the life of me get my tie rods out. Don't know why. Hopefully you have better luck than I do. But yeah, not my best work. So anyways, didn't get those out, so I'm just kind of living with it. We're gonna pull the shock out. This is already loose. We just kind of make some room here. We're gonna pull this basically to make the room. We're gonna pull this nut here off the knuckle and the ball joint, and this should all come free. This will come holding down, so we're gonna put a jack below it. Then we're gonna wiggle our strut here out. And since I'm replacing control arms, a lot of people aren't, but since I am, I'm going to basically be removing the two bolts in here and then pulling the whole control arm out and doing this exact same process over. But basically, if you're just doing the strut and the spacer, you are going to want to just wiggle your strut out. And then once your strut is completely out of the car, you're gonna want to, if you're doing the bottom spacer, you're gonna completely take this apart. And I have a video all about that. I've already pre-recorded that because I did this yesterday on my spare struts. So yeah, we're gonna work on getting this out, and once this is out, you'll see the video of me taking apart the struts. You can put yours together, and then we'll show you how to put them back together after you've already done that step. So I'll see you in a minute. All right, so I am coming at you from the past, but I'm talking to you in the future, so I don't really know the right way to say that, but I think I said it right. Anyways, this is the suspension. I'm going to be working on putting the lower spacer on so we get the additional inch that most people don't usually put on. I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. We have the full setup here. And I have the spring compressor. I rented it, spring compressor, the McPherson spring compressor, I think is what it's called, from O'Reilly's. It was $60 bucks to have a deposit, but you get all your money back if you return it in one piece. So let's hope we can do that. But yeah, basically in a nutshell, what's going to happen is we're going to compress the spring safely, of course. Please be careful. This is like super dangerous to do. Keep your hands away from everything as much as you can, just in case. And when you're working with it, just be extra careful. There's been a lot of bad things happen with these things. I'm already a little nervous, but if you play nervous, bad things happen. So let's get into it. So yeah, we're going to compress the spring. We're going to take the top hat off, pull the whole spring assembly out, and then basically we're going to knock this perch off with a mallet, knock this perch off here, and then we're going to throw our new spacer on, put everything back together as it's supposed to be, and then we'll compress the spring again, or we'll decompress the spring and put back to normal. So yeah. So I haven't compressed the springs or anything. I just put these in, putting the locking pins and everything, make sure we're safe. But basically I made some lines of reference. I had a gold marker. So basically I just wanted to make sure I have everything lined up here in the right spot. I think I'll be okay. But yeah, I wanted to make sure. So I did some line markings there, pretty rough, but I did. So it's good to make those measurements so that way you don't have anything not going back together the way it was. So now it's time to be safe, put the pins in, and compress the spring, and then we can work on taking the bolt out of the top hat here. I have a 15 mil socket. I don't have a 15 mil open-ended, but I'm going to give it a shot. If this starts to spin, basically you use an open-ended on the bottom, and on the top here you use channel locks, or yeah, mostly channel locks, or the adjustable wrench that can close this tight. So we're going to give it a shot. If I can't figure it out, we'll try something else. So the spring is fully compressed. There's play in here. I'm not going to shake it right now because I've already disassembled it. But basically, this nut here is on your top. Your plate goes before that. Then there comes your nut. But when you start to get the nut loose, this whole assembly is going to spin in the shock. You don't want to just keep spinning it. You don't want to impact it either. So basically, you're going to use, I use vice grips and adjustable wrench and sometimes channel locks just to break it loose, get it off, and then get the nut loose. Then your top hat will come off just like this. This one doesn't have a whole lot of miles on it. This is so it still has some of the grease and stuff on there from the factory. But after that, this whole assembly will come off with the spring just like that. Please be careful with that. Make sure your pins are locked in still. You're not having any issues. And then, yeah, we'll get to going on this other bottom part. So basically, sorry, I'm sideways here. Basically, the spring perch here is going to be kind of stuck onto there. You're going to use a mallet. Don't use a metal hammer because you're going to chunk out the metal and make it. You're going to dent it up. It's not going to work right. Use a mallet. A little bit of persuasion. You're going to get this off. We're going to take this rubber isolator thing off here, and then we're going to pull this off and put our new spacer on. So you're going to throw your new ring on there, your spacer ring, and then you're going to reverse the process. You're going to put your perch back on. Same thing. All it did was basically shift up your perch spot from here to here, but that will make a world of a difference on the truck. So yeah, basically just make sure this is on snug. It's going to eventually, when you decompress the spring, it'll push it down even further and lock into here. But just like that, the way I have it is the flat end down and the beveled end up, because this lower piece right here is beveled up. I don't know if you can see that. I think that's the correct way. It doesn't really show on the directions here, and I can't really see any online, but that's what makes the most sense to me. So we're going to put that there, put the new perch on, or put the same perch on and throw this whole thing back together. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so this is installed with the new spacer. You can't really see it under there, but it is set there. I could tell that it moved the spring up because I had to compress it a little bit more to get it in there snug. So yeah, I did push the spring up, which is good. Everything's back together. Sorry I didn't film the process of me putting it back together. But basically what happened was the exact opposite. I put the rubber isolator back, or the dust cover on, slid the top on, and I was able to tighten it without using channel locks. So I basically torqued it there. We're good. Apparently the torque specs on this are pretty low. I think, don't quote me on this, but they were something in like the 20s. But I hand tight as much as I could, and it basically bottoms out. So you're fine. As long as everything goes back in, good to go. And then I'm going to do the other one, obviously off camera, but I'll do the other one. And then, yeah, that should be it for this. All right, so both struts are fully assembled, lined back up the way they should be. I have the spacers on the bottom. That should mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, no more spring compressors. Everything came out fine as long as you lock your pins in. Tomorrow, which you'll probably already be, this is going to be kind of sort of flashback, like I said. All we got left to do is put the spacers back on the top and remove everything else from the truck, put them back on, slide these puppies in, and they should be good to go. So basically, it's hard to explain because it's really difficult to do while filming, especially when it's like I'm putting both spacers on, so there's a lot of stuff going on. Basically, in a nutshell, what I did was I got rid of the bottom shock bolt, got rid of the top shock bolt. Then I loosened the knuckle here, I loosened the ball joint, and the knuckles began to sag. Basically, I had a jack under that, holding it up so it wasn't really pulling against the brake lines. We're still good here. It's not really, I mean, it's not great to pull, but we were better than we were. But basically, to create the most amount of room, you're going to want to lower your jack a little bit. And while you have both of these unbolted, you're just gonna finagle this thing out of there. There's no good way to do it. I basically took the bottom end of the strut, dropped it down here, and then pulled the strut out like this and lifted it up like that. That's gonna probably be your best bet, other than taking off the sway bar, and then maybe trying to finagle it out down there. If you can get your tie rod out, I don't know why the hell I can't get mine out. Maybe I'm just being dumb. Then you won't even have to worry about any of that. You just pull the strut out sideways and drop it down and you're good to go. Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury, but yeah, so everything's back on here, with the strut at least. And I torqued it down. This is 74 foot-pounds of torque here. And the top ones, I believe, are 43. With that, we're gonna put the knuckle back together with the ball joint. And then we're going to kind of work our way back into, trying to make sure I get this right here. We're going to work our way back into putting everything slowly back together. We're going to take a look at the control arm because we got it all lined up here where the older one is. This ball joint's much better in a happier place. So let's see how it goes together. So I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. We already got the knuckle back on, but it was a fight. It was me and Blake both, and we had some ratchet straps, and we're still kind of had a bit of a field day. But basically my method here is to use a ratchet strap. Some people use a pry bar and they put it underneath here and kind of just give themselves some leverage to get this thing down, or putting a pry bar up here and doing that. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know, and plus I don't really want to mess with my tools that bad. And I had ratchet straps laying around, so what more redneck thing can we do? So I basically ran it from the control arm here down behind the lower control arm, and not touching any brake lines, not touching any tie rods or anything like that, just giving you a full kind of a crank down that will pull this whole thing down enough to where you can slide the nut in, thread it in by hand, and then thread it in with a socket, and then loosen the tension on here. And after that, the next step would be put the tie rod back on, torque these back on. I believe 37 foot-pounds is what this ball joint is. Be careful not to let it spin. There's a Allen key hole right there. So you have the Allen key and an open-ended wrench. You tighten as much as you can, and then you hit it with a torque wrench for, I think it's 37 foot-pounds. And then we put this back on, and this is 26 foot-pounds here. Same thing, except this is a 10 mil up here. Open-ended wrench it, close it, get it tight, and then throw your torque wrench and get you down to 26. Not too much. And then we're gonna work on putting the sway bar back on and the end link, and then we can lower this thing to the ground, see how it looks. So essentially our last step was to put the sway bar back on. We're gonna torque them. I believe they're 36 foot-pounds here. And then we need to get the end links on. If we can't get them standing up like this with the truck on stands, then what we're gonna do is put the wheel back on, lower it to the ground, and then do it. But we're gonna try to do it without it. If we can, I'll let you know real quick. But basically our method is gonna be just to try to slide it back up into the hole here, and then maybe see if we can get some play out of it. If not, we'll set it on the ground, we'll do it that way. But so far so good. And then we'll torque these up and then put the wheels on and see what we look like. All right, so we have everything tied up together except the sway bar end link, and we're gonna do that on the ground. So our next step is to put the wheel on, lower it, put wheels on both sides, lower it, try to get the sway bar back on, and then we'll see how it looks from there. All right, so we're gonna drop it now. Let's see. Bam. So after a little bit of driving around, making sure everything's torqued up, I got the tie rod end linkage done, and yeah, this is how it sits, dude. I really love it. I measured it out. We were at 34.5 inches in the front, I believe it was, and now we're 37. So I think it's gonna settle down a little bit with time. It's really filthy here, but yeah, dude, this thing looks really good. Something I am noticing though, it is sitting a little higher than the front. I did not put the new shocks on the back yet. These are 100,000 mile shocks. These are 100-mile shocks. So it's going to be a little bit different. I think maybe with adding a little bit in the rear to those new shocks, I think it'll be perfectly level. But right now I feel like it's a little maybe down in the rear. I can't really tell. I'm trying to see if you guys can get like an even playing field. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so it has been it's been a couple of weeks actually since I filmed those last clips of the truck sitting out inside the house, fully leveled. The truck has had time to settle. I got it aligned the next day, and I've driven almost 1,000 miles on the truck so far. It drives great, it looks great, but now it's actually fully had time to settle, so I'm gonna show you guys how it looks after that. And I will say that it has a little bit of sag in the rear compared to the front. I did put the rear shocks on and I tried to adjust them, but it does have a little sag. So I will show you that right now. It's not too bad. I'm considering putting 1-inch blocks on the rear just to kind of offset it, but I do really like the way the truck sits. So let's show you the truck. So this is actually how the truck sits. Like I said, I think it's about 3 weeks or almost a month after doing the leveling kit. As you can see up here, it does sit a little, just a tad higher. It also doesn't help that I only have highway tires in the front and all-terrains in the back. I didn't do that. The dealer I bought it from actually did that. So I will be changing those. So I think it'll make it a little bit better. But I measured it out, and this one is 37 inches. That one is 36 3/4. So it's about a 1/4 inch difference. I'm gonna probably end up doing 1-inch rear blocks just to kind of even it out a little bit. But for now, I'm gonna let it sit. I'm gonna drive it like this, get new tires all around to make it sit better, and then I can enjoy the truck. I really think it is much better. All right, guys, that is gonna do it for today's video. Thank you so much for sticking around. I appreciate you guys. If you'd like to see more content on the truck, let me know. I love working on that thing. I love driving it. So if that interests you guys, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you like the way the truck sits now, like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions on the install or anything else I can help you out with, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hit me up on Instagram. I have a TikTok and on YouTube. So all at Redneck Tuners. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.